Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jerred Moon. The Garage Gym Athlete Podcast is a result of my desire to build better humans, unequivocal coaches, and autonomous athletes. I've spent the last several years obsessing over program design, nutrition, and every other way you can optimize human performance. This podcast distills the latest scientific research with what I've learned and blends it with the not-so-scientific field of mental toughness. We are here to build you into a dangerously effective athlete. If you enjoy this podcast, you can find out more about our training at garagegymathlete.com. And if you want to pursue more into the field of coaching and programming, head to endof3fitness.com. Thanks for listening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here with Ashley Hicks, Kyle Schrum, and Joe Courtney. Everyone, what's up?
Going.
Oh, hola.
Yo, you're in your new spot.
I am.
Your
I am.
new
It
spot.
was, new. All the new news. So happy to have an actual office back and my legit computer and setup, even though I've had issues with camera stuff. But it's still, I have an office, even though I got nothing here yet.
What's going to go there?
I have no idea. I don't know what would be
A banner.
good there. The banner would be too big. It would stick out. Plus, that's where the garage belongs, the banner, which I have a garage now and a gym.
Woohoo!
You should just go ahead and put your Christmas tree there.
Mm-mm.
How? It's literally like 18 inches behind me.
I can't tell how deep that is. I can't tell how much
I'm touching
space is there.
I'm touching it.
It's a white wall for me.
I think a framed picture of a unicorn would be
That's good. That's
phenomenal.
Good. See it?
That's
Honestly, the best suggestion so far.
Okay.
Because
I do have a legitimate thing I wanted to point out, though, and you mentioned it. So Joe is a Garage Gym Athlete for the first time. How long have you been around, Joe?
First time
Like
ever.
100 years?
Yeah.
And you are officially a Garage Gym Athlete with a garage. So that's what I wanted to bring up. Congratulations, Joe. Everyone
Welcome.
listening, give some a round of
Woo-woo.
applause. He's been never a basement. He's been an outdoor. He's been an outdoor field. He's been a
Base gym.
side parking lot, CrossFit box, base gym, Globo gym. He's done everything, but this is the first garage gym. So it's awesome.
Cherry popped.
Weren't you working out in a like in a parking lot for a while once or something like that?
So back when we were living in Arlington, I had a barbell in an apartment and we did the Iron Mile. I didn't have any plates, so I just walked around with an empty barbell and I did circles in our parking lot around the apartment for a long time.
I knew I remembered a parking lot story. That's awesome. All right, well, let's get into it. We're going to be going over the study on strength priming, which is a very, very interesting study. And then we're going to cover the book Ingredients, which was really good. Thanks, Kyle, for the suggestion there. We'll cover workout for the
Clap.
day.
Golf clap.
Finally did something right around here.
Yeah, you
You do a lot of things right.
well, all right. Yeah.
On the team for 4 years, contributed one good thing.
No, he's doing a great job. So the name of the study is Influence of Strength Level on Performance Enhancement Using Resistance Priming. Okay, so the quick gist of this study is, if you don't know what strength priming is, it's like essentially doing a miniature workout before a workout, like 24 hours before a workout, to increase your performance in the workout that you care about more. And so it's more of like a velocity-based training session. Then you wait a day and then you test something that, I mean, because you wouldn't care more about the priming session, right? That's what they call it, priming. Like
Right.
You don't prime your walls, Anyway, so yeah, that's what priming is. And there's a study over it. I do think the research is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mhm.
think it's fully developed yet. So this is more of like an introduction to resistance priming for garage gym athletes. I don't think there's a ton of prescription or takeaway for everybody, but there might be as time goes on, because I kept diving into this stuff, trying to look at other studies, and there's just not a lot of research on it. And to be honest, it's not super conclusive one way or the other. There's not like a whole body of literature on it like there is like concurrent training or aerobic training and stuff like that. So it's resistance priming, could be helpful. So the purpose of this study was to examine if a priming session could enhance jump performance 24 hours later. There was 20 trained men with an average of more than 4 years of resistance training experience and more than 11 years of sport participation in that completed study. The 20 men were split into stronger and weaker groups. They didn't even try like naming it A and B, Alpha, Bravo. They're like, hey, you're in strong group, you're in weak group. And they grouped the base. Yeah, right. And the weak guys weren't even weak. If you look at the data, wasn't the weak population like they could squat 1.7 times their body weight?
Yep.
Yeah, that. Yep.
So if you think that's weak, whatever, like that's pretty solid. But the reason they did it is because they just split at the median. And so they just split and see what else they had. It was a crossover design with two conditions. In both conditions, subjects were first familiarized with the jump squat, counter movement jump, and drop jump during an initial visit. During the initial visit, subjects performed a back squat 1-rep MAC test, and the researchers determined the optimal drop jump height for each subject. Optimal drop jump height was the height from which subjects jumped down that produced the greatest reactive strength index upon landing and jumping up from the force platform. Reactive strength index was defined as jump height divided by ground contact time. After about 44 to 172 hours after the initial visits, subjects returned to the lab for the first experimental condition. After a short warm-up, subjects performed baseline testing on a force plate for the jump squat, counter movement jump, and drop jump. Both jump squat and counter movement jump testing were performed at 0% using a PVC pipe and 40% of 1-rep max. Jump squats were performed with a 2-second pause at the bottom of the squat to reduce the influence of the stretch reflex, while counter movement jump testing was performed with a fluid motion. I don't know if there's anything else. Following baseline testing, subjects performed either the priming condition consisting of 5x4 jump squats at 40% of 1-rep max, or no training in the control condition. Jumping performance was then retested 24 hours later. And then the main outcome was the priming helped with people who were strong and didn't help with people who were a little less strong. There's no way I'm going to call them weak throughout this whole study because I just can't do it. So anyway, if you're really strong, priming's awesome. If you're not as strong, priming's not so awesome. That's your takeaway. And the priming, if you want the programming, the priming they did 5x4 jump squats at 40% of 1-rep max. So that's the easy of the programming. So any takeaways, other data you all want to cover? What do we have?
Will someone else jump in first?
Whoa.
Ashley called it before we recorded.
Steal it
So
then.
Ashley, go
Ashley's
ahead.
going first.
Okay. Well, so looking at the study, just like you said, there's not too much for our typical garage gym athlete, but what I did take away from it is that a base of strength helps with it, right? So we've talked about how important a strength base is in multiple podcasts now, multiple episodes, and that it helps you in a lot of other training, a lot of other areas in your training as well. So I kind of went that route, if you will. And if you think about it, it wasn't improvement in like strength numbers. It was just improvement in basically explosive movement, right? Mm-hmm. So with that, I mean, the faster you can move weight, the more powerful you are. So, I mean, that's, a positive from that. But I don't know. It was, again, I think that the whole strength-based thing is where I went with this one. It was an all-male study. So of course I was a little jaded on no females, but again, yeah, not too much to take away from this one. Kyle.
I think there's application here for garage gym athletes who are still competing in things. I don't know how many people we have that might be still competing. Like if you're competing in, recreational sports or something like that. Or if we have garage gym athletes who are coaches, like if you are coaching some sort of sport, I know we have garage gym athletes who do that. So you could apply this potentially in the athletes that you coach or something like that. But I think Jerred was right. I think this is more a primer on resistance priming. Get it?
Wow.
Get it?
That's deep.
Oh,
So
wow.
this is going to be our like primer episode on like, because I think this is going to continue to be something that's studied into the future, and we might see some research down the line that is more directly tested, maybe even on a garage gym athlete type population. But as Ashley said, and what we have said for years now and on multiple podcasts, and in everything that we do, strength is the foundation. Before you try to do anything, you need to be strong. And it's especially when it's talking about power, because that's what they're measuring here. They're measuring power with the different jump tests that they do. The stronger people saw more improvement in their power, or generated more power and saw bigger results from the priming testing that they did. So strength is the foundation, and that's pretty much it. That's what everybody needs to know. You need to be strong no matter what it is that you're doing. Be strong. Joe.
So I think this priming session is, as Kyle was saying, best for if you are going to compete, and it is geared toward enhancing performance. And the main time that we test our performance is fit week. So I think a priming session might be an idea if you want to try it out to prepare for a fit week. If you think you are going to go for a new max out, I know I personally don't do a true max out every fit week. I might get to a heavy one and call it good. Maybe once or maybe twice a year, I'll actually try to do a full max out of those. So I think a priming session, if you think you're feeling of going toward true max one day, the day before might be a good time to do some of these explosive type movements to prepare a priming session. Do some body weight jump squats the day before you're going to do your back squat max or something like that. And as far as the two groups goes, is in kind of our terms, the stronger group would be the competitors, and the quote unquote weaker group would just be the established. So even if you're established, that's still in the that's still the other group. We won't call them weaker. So it's still good. But that was the main thing, is the preparing for that sort of performance. And that's what this study is. It doesn't really apply to all everyday training. You're not going to do priming sessions every day. I mean, if you want to do a pseudo priming session as a warm-up before squatting, sure. I mean, that's basically just what a warm-up is. But priming session is just an elongated, sort of like an elongated active warm-up. I don't know if that makes sense for the day before, in a way. The only other thing that I thought of while going through this was that, and it just might be an idea, is that the established group might have gotten more fatigued over the load that they were put through versus the stronger group. And to me, maybe it could be a correlation between the relative to what you lift per your body weight, you might experience fatigue more. And there was another study that was talked about, that it was basically the same thing happened. They put too much load, and the stronger group did better, but the less strong group did not. And it could be because they are getting fatigued more, because they can't lift in accordance to their body weight as much, because the percentages were based off of their maxes, not their body weight, versus basing it off of their body weight versus, and they're ranking them based on their body weight, or their relative body weight to their max. So that's just an aside that I thought of, that maybe there are benefits for the established groups, just do less than what the stronger groups would do. You could still benefit from a priming session, just don't do quite as much, because there's a chance you could fatigue more than the stronger groups.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And the reason I had kind of a problem with the study is because if they would have just been like, priming sessions are good, that would have been awesome. We could tell all athletes, hey, priming sessions are great. Maybe consider doing this before fit week. But the takeaway was actually really strong people can benefit from priming sessions. Mm-hmm. And as a coach, like that makes zero sense to me. Like if you're saying really advanced athletes can benefit from this, but beginner athletes cannot, I'd be like, yeah, that happens all the time. But the difference in like a 1.7 and a 2.2 times your body weight back squat being the weaker strong, like doesn't make a damn bit of sense to me, and why one person would benefit and one person wouldn't. So yeah, if you took the weaker group, quote unquote weaker group, and lowered them down to 5 sets of 4 at 30%, maybe that would make a difference. I don't know. Because not even like getting away from relative or, it being percentage of 1 rep max, like when you are more advanced and stronger, you can just handle training differently than other people. You can just handle more. You can handle things in a better way. You can recover faster. And so I think that there's something fuzzy here. The science didn't quite get it out. There's no real reason to me why all of these advanced people, because I read at the beginning what it took to be in the study. That is a very high level type of athlete for a study in general. A lot of times they're studying people who've done basically nothing, and then they put them through a strength program and they try to make some conclusion. So these people are closer to garage gym athletes, but you would just have to be very advanced to take away. So I don't think that there's a direct takeaway for our athletes, but the indirect takeaway I think that we could get has more to do with plyometrics and jumping. There's something there. And I just want to say I've heard it anecdotally from like coaches and like these one-off studies, but I haven't pieced it together enough to where I could give any, like, I can put it into our programming methodology. Like we do that stuff. We do dynamic efforts and everything else. But there are studies out there that, doing drop jumps before back squat increases back squat. There's like a lot of little things like this. There's some mechanism that I don't even think science is clear on yet, that doing more plyometric, more not just dynamic stuff. It really has to be like super explosive. Like jumping with your body weight is a different level of explosive than a dynamic effort with a load. It helping with your 1 rep max and everything else. So there's something there, and that's about all I can give to the garage gym athlete listening to this right now, since there's not a direct, this study's not saying that you should do priming sessions, because it's really saying you should do priming sessions if you're really strong. But I think that as you age, the longer you train, I think it's easy to lose things like plyometrics and jumping and dynamic efforts. You could really get stuck in this like moderate load lifting and moderate aerobic endurance training for the rest of your life, which is good for you, but you might start to lose out on things like power, like Ashley was mentioning, or you might lose out on a little bit of stability and all these other things that can really help you also as you age and want to live longer and, be completely mobile in those time frames. Because I'm sure you've all seen endurance athletes who've been running their whole lives, but they can't touch their toes, and like people who are like insanely strong, but they can't scratch their back. There are a lot of like things like that. Just because you have achieved something doesn't mean you're really that well rounded. And so don't lose sight of dynamic, don't lose sight of explosive, plyometric, don't lose sight of those things in your training. That's kind of my takeaway from the study. And we will be back with more if we get more information on priming sessions and plyometrics and everything else. But you guys have anything else to throw into that?
Nope.
I mean, I really hope they do throw in females though, because as Joe and I, and like the last couple studies that we did with ladies, our maxes are a lot lower relative to our body weight than it is for men, but can do, like we said, maybe a little bit more at higher percentages. So I wonder what would have happened if they would have thrown females into the mix of the weaker group, if that would have changed anything. So just curious is all.
It's almost like they should have had an experienced coach look at the programming and try and poke holes in it. It only took Joe like 5 seconds to be like, well, why don't you try this? Yeah. And so, all right. So let's move on to the book. I think a lot of chatter in the back end of Garage Gym Athlete amongst the team on this one. Said Kyle recommended it. Which it was pretty good. So the name of the book is Ingredients, the Strange Chemistry of What We Put in Us and on Us. And it is, I didn't practice the author name before I started, but it's George Zaidan. Did I get it right?
Yeah, I think good.
All right. Close enough. So I'll just read a quick blurb from the Amazon page here. Ingredients offers the perspective of a chemist on the stuff we eat, drink, inhale, and smear on ourselves. Apart from the burning question of whether you should eat those Cheetos, Zaidan explores a range of topics. Here's a helpful guide. Stuff in this book. How bad is processed food? How sure are we? Is sunscreen safe? Should you use it? Is coffee good or bad for you? What's your disease horoscope? What is that public pool smell made of? What happens when you overdose on fentanyl in the sun? What do cassava plants and Soviet spies have in common? When will you die? So really, if I just had to cover broad strokes here on this book, I think the subtitle does it the best justice. So he does talk about processed foods. He talks about smoking and vaping. He talks about sunscreen. He talks about the sun. He talks about a lot of stuff. And I think that it was a refreshing book in a way that, we can get really worried about things, right? Like, what's good, what's bad, and how much does it actually matter? And that's something I've always wondered about, because if I ever meet somebody who stresses a lot about food, like I try and eat healthy, but I even got asked this question 2 weeks ago by my mother-in-law. I forgot what I ate. Oh, I wasn't anything bad. She was just asking a general question. She's like, when you eat something unhealthy, she's like, do you have a lot of guilt surrounding that? Like, do you feel bad and all this stuff? She was asking me that. And I was like, absolutely not. If I eat something bad, I think obviously I picked it, so it's delicious, at least in my mind, and I don't care. I have no worry about that whatsoever. And I think that's great. But if I did have what she was talking about, some sort of mental connection to where I eat a cheeseburger and I'm like, oh, I think I can feel my heart slowing down, and this is going to be so bad. There are people who think like this, and they're basically psychological disorders. And I think if you think that way, the psychological side of that is more damaging for you than what you actually ate. Like what
100%.
Your body's like, whatever, we can deal with this. But in your brain, you're like, this is awful, and the brain is powerful. I won't say what happens from there, but the brain is powerful. And I think it can do a lot of things. So you got to be careful with how you feel about these things. And he kind of talks about whether or not we should even care that much, about processed food and all this other stuff. So that's kind of just me opening the door to it. I think we all have a good amount to say on it. So whoever wants to go first, dive in. Kind of what was your takeaway on ingredients?
I think Kyle should go first since you recommended it.
I don't know. I might just take up all the time that we have to talk about. I really could say,
cheers.
Yeah, I really could say a lot of things about it. Could go on and on about it. I loved it. I thought it was a great book. If you get the audio version, which of course I did, if you've listened to the podcast once, then you know that that's how I do it. But if you get the audio version, the author actually reads it, and which is also something that's not normal for this type of book, for a science-based book or just a nonfiction book in general. Like typically an author or a publisher will have a professional reader read it for the audio version. But
as a nerd wrote it, right? And they're like not okay with like reading it, but they are okay with writing it. Yeah.
Yeah. This guy read it himself, and he's hilarious. He puts a lot of jokes and puns and things like that in the book. And I think because of that, I think that's a big reason why I enjoyed it so much, was he made it accessible. And I think there's a lot of he's a chemist by trade. So he's a major nerd, but
went to MIT.
Yeah. He did his grad work and stuff at MIT. So it's like, he's a nerd of nerds, maybe, I guess you would say. In my mind, that's what you are. You're a nerd.
Don't worry, you offended the 2 listeners who went to MIT who are listening
to anyway, so yeah, but you expect somebody who has that kind of training and that kind of knowledge in a very specific field and has a very narrow focus on the work that he does to kind of bland. It's kind of hard to get through a lot of technical jargon, things like that. And we've read books like that and covered books like that on here, but this one is not that way. He does a very good job of mixing the entertainment and the human factor into it, as well as keeping the technical jargon there. You can't get away from the technical jargon. It's going to be there. But I felt like he kept it to a minimum and kind of made it accessible to the masses. So I really enjoyed it. 10 out of 10 on the entertainment factor. But he does talk about, as far as highly processed food. He talks a lot about how research is actually done, how it's actually carried out, which was fascinating to me since we cover studies on here all the time. How research is done, how research is published, the peer review process. He dives into that as well, which is really good to understand. And honestly, for our listeners, since we're covering studies on here all the time, this is a great book for you to read just to understand the back end of the studies that we're covering, and that we can kind of, put at least some measure of faith in studies. If they've been published, it means they've been through a peer review process. They still could have pitfalls. They still could be, inaccurate as far as the things that they measured, or, maybe it's not definitive proof of something, but at least it's been through a peer review process of, that's what scientists do. They just take each other's research and try to poke holes in it. And it's like, that's the whole point. And everybody does that to each other. So, his conclusion was kind of, ultra processed food. The jury's still kind of out on whether it's actually definitively bad for you or not. And which was kind of his conclusion at the end of the book. But he does believe that there's enough evidence to at least say it's probably bad for you. You probably, but as a chemist, not as a health coach, as a chemist, he's saying, I'm looking at the research and there's a case to be made that it's bad for you, but it's not, we can't be 100% sure right now. I, as a coach and as an athlete who can tell you it's bad for you, you shouldn't eat it. You should be eating whole foods and shaping up on those things. But anyway, I thought he did a really good job, and it's a great book. I think everybody should read it. So I'm going to cut myself off now. Sorry. I'm going to pick Ashley next.
Yeah, I think the dude was hilarious as well. I said I never thought a chemist could make me laugh so much. And Kyle talked a little bit about the technical jargon. There's a point where he talks about photosynthesis, and he gives you the straight textbook definition. And then he was like, did you just fall asleep? Good. So did I. Let's talk about the layman's terms of it. He was really good at just keeping it light and kind of, yes, giving you technical jargon, but also explaining it in layman's terms. So all of us normal people can understand what he was saying. He also has some YouTube videos. So go check him out on YouTube. They're really, really short clips and they're really fun to watch. And it's exactly what it's on this book. It's on sunscreen. There's one on coffee. I was really laughing last night when I was checking them out, but I think he made a valid point on nutrition, that studies on nutrition are ever changing. It's never one size fits all kind of thing. It's just, even he talked about coffee and the differences of what people found on coffee, the different studies was astounding to me.
Within days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he made a great valid point of that. And I think too, what I loved about that is that he kind of challenges you to say, hey, just because you read this on one thing, so if you read an article or a study or whatever you read, don't just take that and make that your Bible and only follow that because that's the thing you read. Do a little digging of your own and know that it's probably going to change in a couple of years anyways.
He calls it the bridge of truth, right? It's each study that you read is one brick in this bridge, and it's only one piece that's building an entire thing. Then you have to see the whole thing. And it takes a long, long time for the bridge to get built. So,
yeah. I liked how he talked about too, with different studies. He's well, sometimes they're in a contained part and they're not actually studying people that are in their actual living habitats. Wherever they live, they take these people out of their natural habitat. And anyways, really good book. A couple funny points. The sunburn lady made me cringe. Oh my gosh, I could
don't
not
fall
even...
asleep in the sun, people.
Oh my gosh,
don't do it.
Just read it.
She went into a coma in the sun.
Yeah.
Yes, because of the amount of
fentanyl.
That's right. That was going into her bloodstream because of the sun.
Yeah.
Right.
Because of the heat, and then she was in the sun for 6 hours before they got her. Yeah, and had to go to a burn unit because her skin was so crisp. Anyways, that's that one. And then the chapters on plants, because he talks a little bit about plants, and I see Joe has some of that, so I'm gonna let Joe take most of that, but kind of reminded me of Plant Paradox a little bit of, plants are also really
Trying to kill you.
Well, it's a good point. Like they don't have any other way to protect themselves, so they release some chemicals. Oh, and everything has chemicals. I really liked the beginning of definition of like, what's he say? Whole food, organic, hippie is what he calls them.
Those conversations that he staged were really funny.
Yeah, they were great.
They're really good.
It's funny because it's true.
You're not wrong, Joe.
All right, so I got a bunch of things that were really, really cool to take away. Start off, like at first going into this book, I thought it was going to be on nutrition because it's called Ingredients. There's a picture of a Cheeto. He took some side tangents that I did not expect. Like I think I mentioned in our chat that he went on a long time about smoking, and I'm just like, yeah, dude, we've known for decades smoking's bad. I don't need to hear all of this about why smoking is bad. Like I get what he was trying to paint a picture and go into like the minute details of each chemical and like the sources, and like kind of also proving the science of how they found out it was, but also how finding out it was at times was either wrong or could be misleading. So either way, like there were some side tangents he had that I just didn't care that much about. But it's still like refreshing and kind of interesting that it was pretty much very unbiased, which is new for when it comes to anything that comes to health, because usually everybody's going to say, we've read a few books by vegetarians and vegans who where they fall in that line after reading their book, and some other bias in that way. He's just a chemist that's talking about chemicals, and he's a huge nerd and makes a lot of nerd references, which is really funny and really cool. But Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, some other pop culture references that
I'm sure you guys got all those. I was like, what?
There were lots of them.
What's he talking about?
According to Jerred, fantasy's all on unicorns.
yeah. So that was really cool. And sunscreen was, even though I didn't care that much about the sunscreen part, there were still some interesting things. Like I realized that Jerred, you could probably be a test subject for sunscreen because he said that they use the most pastiest white people out there.
I saw that in your notes. I didn't think you'd actually use it. So I'm gonna have to get you back. It's gonna be brutal. It's gonna be some random podcast.
I think this week we have the one episode published about the problems episode about sunshine. So it's kind of on brand.
Okay.
Anyway, but the sunscreen was interesting because of he talks about how it's tested and why they say apply twice and stuff, because the amount that is recommended to apply nobody uses, and then all the chemicals that are in it.
I do.
Butter,
just
like
gotta keep that skin.
Going into the plant part, I really, really liked the metaphor or the connection he used between how embalming fluid and preservatives, because embalming fluid is used to preserve bodies and then preservatives is used to preserve food. And while it's kind of a stretch and kind of hyperbolic, it's still like there's a connection there. And think about that. And whenever you go into your food that has a ridiculously long shelf life, if it's not like something that's canned or jarred, if it's just like in a package, then there's a lot of preservatives in there. And it was just one of those, like where you step back and like, oh yeah, I never really thought about preservatives being like embalming fluid. And again, he talks about the science of those and how they're related. Pretty fascinating stuff he brought up. It's also kind of interesting how he had so much, like it felt like at times he had so much doom and gloom, but then his takeaway was just like, don't worry about it. You're probably gonna be fine. Like
you'll probably
you'll probably be fine.
Like even if you change all these things, even if you change all of these things, you're only going to live like 3 more years. Like, there's just something like that. Like
the older you get, the closer to death you are. I was like, wow, this is
like, is that the takeaway? Yeah. The section on science was pretty crazy and interesting, and something that we kind of know too, because dealing with nutrition and seeing different sides of nutrition and how actual science contradicts a lot of these marketing things that people can use, and science is just used for marketing. And that's how the whole low fat craze came about because a company hired a scientist to find a reason why they should buy this product and why people shouldn't eat high fat or eat certain fat. And then he designed a study around it. And he goes into the flaws of how science and studies can be. And even when they find blatant math or flaws with studies, it could be years before it's even changed. And by then, damage is done, marketing has been done, and that's just how science is. And I won't say specifically why, but nowadays, with what's going on science-wise, I don't think people want to question it, but they need to realize that science is still, even though hard science people think is objective, there's still scientists who are executing it, which makes it subjective. It's still at the flaws of humans and people reviewing it and how they're designed. So while science can be black and white, it's also not because of who is handling it. And he just kind of shed light on that, which I always like when these books kind of illuminate you on things that you just kind of just thought like, oh yeah, this study says this study says this, but it's like, well, how did they come about that? How is this whole thing happen? So that was really cool. And let's see, I thought I had one more thing. Oh, well, I don't know how much I want to talk about the chlorine smell, the pool smell. That was the part that kind of grossed me out. Yeah,
read the
if
book,
you want to
you'll
know,
find out.
yeah, if you want to know, I don't want to
Just leave that as an inside joke.
If you want to know why pool smells the way it does, it's not the chlorine. And yeah, I guess I'll.
You're on a roll.
Yeah.
Oh man.
We can come back. You want me to come back?
Yeah, we can just go ahead. But that was it. And although his takeaway was that, processed foods might not be all that bad, because one of his main points was that, like, he kept on going over and over. It's like, what is a processed food? People can't define a processed food. He even said that at one point, a potato is a processed food because they used to be toxic and they had to process it to get the toxins out in order to eat it. And it's just a potato. So, like, by technical definition, because of his sciencey nerd brain, so many things are processed foods. But so it's hard to make a clear study to say, okay, this is a processed food. So this is what's going to cause that. That study that he mentions, where the intensive one that was in Maryland for like 30 days, sounds pretty interesting. It would be kind of cool to read more about that and some of their takeaways and how.
I think we covered that one a long time ago.
Really? Might have. But how, like, even though they weren't give them parameters on how much to eat, the people who ate the processed foods ate like 500 calories more. But even though he wasn't able to and didn't quite say that processed foods cause issues and death and stuff, I think processed foods cause X, which cause Y, which cause this. So I think it's a chain reaction that processed foods do, which it would be really hard for them to say, any person to say it's their fault, it's that fault. It's like, no, they died because of this. Well, they had this because of this, and well, they had this because they ate a whole bunch of Cheetos and crap. So while it's one of those, does correlation meet causation, which I think in a way it does. But either way, processed foods can cause a whole lot of bad things. Not necessarily if you eat a bunch of these things, you're just going to die.
Well, doesn't he put them in categories too? It's towards the beginning of the book where he's like, this is category 1, the least amount of processing, category 2, just like how far food is from being real food, I guess, is like the.
Yeah, and they have actual ratings. I forgot what the term was, but and I do think that's why we should probably use the term ultra processed in our recommendations of what people shouldn't eat, because everything's processed. Everything's goes through a process. Like, even if I picked a cucumber from my garden in my yard and wash it, that is a process. You know what I mean? Like that is processing cucumbers, and so really it's the ultra process. We all kind of know what it is. It's like, just like I kind of urge athletes, it's like, you know what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Like, do I really need to like spell it out and like write the 10 commandments for you? Or should you just like be smarter when you're trying to eat food? And most of the time people know, right? They know. But can I dive in, Joe, or did you have any more?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. So I loved the book. I actually was struggling with it for a long time as I was going through it, because each chapter I was like, okay, like I'm not getting any strong takeaways. And it was like chapter after chapter, I was like, no takeaway. And so I was like, I really like the author and this is very entertaining, but I'm like, if we don't get somewhere, I'm going to like end up not liking this book. But then he wraps it up really well in chapter 10. And so I think that's what kind of made the book decent. And I'm actually going to pull some data from that, and I won't rehash anything the teams talked about, but yeah, very, very well written for being a chemist coming from MIT, being the most technical information you could possibly cover. And I would rate this as like one of the funniest books I've read in a while, you know? And so getting into things, the takeaways from the book at the end, ultra processed food. And this is just, we're looking at the data that he's presenting, not me. Ultra processed food can equate to 1.3 years of life lost. If you're wealthy in the top 1%, you're going to live an average of 10 to 15 years longer than the bottom 1%. Very interesting.
Mhm.
Then he covered the 5 behaviors, and this is from a giant study that he talks about at the end: smoking, physical activity, obesity, alcohol, and diet. So smoking, I'm not going to cover that a lot. We all know you shouldn't smoke. Don't vape either. Like don't do either one. Just don't do it. Physical activity. If you do 3.5 hours of moderate to vigorous activity, those people lived 8 years longer than those who did no exercise at all. So if you're planning on no exercise, if you're just doing something like daily over decades challenge at the 200 level, that could add 8 years to your life from the baseline of doing nothing. But then it even goes down to if you exercise 0.1 to 0.9 hours per week, your survival boost goes up 4 years. So it's like whatever you can do. And it's going to be like, if you went on one walk today for lunch and that's all you did this week and you can stay consistent with that, that's a 4-year boost. And then if you want to try really hard and do what we're doing, that's an extra 4 years. So I think that it's interesting when you equate it to years like this. Then obesity, if you have BMI greater than 35, your lifespan is 4 to 6 years shorter than those with a BMI of 23 to 25. And if you have it, if your BMI is right at 25 or 26, something like that, you had 1 year shorter lifespan than those in the 23 to 25 range. Alcohol, I found very interesting. So if you don't drink at all, 0 drinking alcohol, or 30 grams a day, had roughly the same lifespan, which was 2 years shorter than those who drank 5 to 15 grams per day of alcohol. So you should drink a little bit of alcohol, 5 to 15 grams, according to the science. Go, Joe.
All right, there's the payback.
There it is. I was waiting. I saw my opportunity.
All right,
Alcoholic of the group.
Joe's going to outlive all of us.
But I will say, Joe doesn't drink that much. All right. He's drinking a beer on the podcast. Okay. And then going into diet, the healthiest was, if you're eating like a healthy diet, 45-year increase over those who had the worst diet. And so the most interesting part of the book, and this is kind of my last point, was they talk about the people who are the absolute worst category, which is morbidly obese, chain smoking alcoholics who eat the worst diet and do less than 6 minutes of physical activity per week. I'm quoting directly from the book. You're in the worst. And you're not even listening to this podcast. If that's you, you're not even here. So I'm not offending anybody. And I'm also not offending that many people because he says it's approximately 0.14% of Americans who do all those things horribly, right? Mm-hmm. Morbidly obese, chain smoking alcoholics who eat the worst diet and do less than 6 minutes of physical activity per week. Now, the best, you have a healthy weight, you never smoke, drink moderately, exercise a decent amount, and eat a healthy diet. You have the best chance of survival. And it's like a 20-year difference. And that's only 0.29% of Americans who fit in that category. And I would say a lot of our athletes fit in that category. And I think that that's awesome. But it's no small difference when you're comparing the worst to the best. 20-year difference, and that's after the age of 50. And so what it comes out to being is whether or not you live to 74 or 94. Like that's a huge, huge difference. And so I think all these things add up. And I thought him diving into that data and his takeaways were really strong. But he acted like doing all those things was really hard. I feel like that's just what you should strive for. I'm not saying it's not hard, but like, what else are you doing? Like if healthy weight, don't smoke, drink moderately. We're not even saying don't drink moderately, exercise a decent amount and eat a healthy diet. Almost doesn't matter what the diet is, so long as you're following one. Like, and that's all you got to do. He made it sound like that's really hard. To me, I don't think that it's that hard. And so that's awesome. Should be encouraging for a lot of people. And then, yeah, don't get so wrapped around the ingredients or the foods. I agree with that to some degree, but I also think that these things matter not in singularity. They matter in the broad spectrum of our lives. Like if you're eating an ultra processed food diet, say that was my diet, but I'm sleeping well, I have great relationships, I'm getting a lot of sun, I drink a lot of water, I exercise daily. Yeah, ultra processed food, probably not that big of a deal. But if you don't have any of those other things figured out, and I'm not even talking about the chain smoking, drinking, all those other things, I'm talking about all these other lifestyle factors, I think these things add up. And so that's why I want to stack the deck in my favor wherever I can and eat healthy and do all these other things, because yeah, I want to sit around and pretend like I'm going to live to be 94 because I'm doing all this crap. But that's not like I think cancer can hit anybody from what I've seen. I think that you could get in a car accident. Like there are a lot of things, so I don't, like I've always said, I don't do any of the things I'm doing to try and live to be 94. That'd be awesome. But I do it because I feel good and I want to perform at a high level. I want to be a good father, husband, entrepreneur, like all these things. And so that's why I do these things. I want to perform at a high level. If it gets me to that next level, that's awesome too. But you shouldn't have to worry about it so much. I do think he said, his ultimate kind of takeaway was it's probably not that big of a deal to eat processed food. But if you want to be like, you know what, I'm not going to eat it because I think it might end up being bad down the road, kind of like smoking, then you're probably safe to do that. And I had the same kind of thesis in Killing Comfort, but mine wasn't about ultra processed food. Mine was about technology usage, phone usage, because there are a lot of studies coming about teenage suicide rates and its correlation to screen time. And it's really sad that the highest usage of screen time correlates with more suicide in teenagers. And people can push back and argue and be like, it's correlation, not causation. And I don't give a shit about any of that. It's like, this is something I don't like to see, so I'm just going to stay away from it. And by me staying away from it is of no detriment to me. There is no benefit to spending 6 to 8 hours of my time each day on my phone, and so my thesis is that I'll stay away from it as much as I can, and we'll see what happens. If I'm wrong, cool. I don't know what I did. I didn't miss out on anything. I missed out on some Instagram likes, maybe, I don't know, but that's about it. Right. And so I think this is kind of the same thing. He has a similar idea of maybe just stay away from it. We don't have the definitive studies, but let's just stay away from it because we all know, I just feel like people know these things. I feel like everyone knows technology is headed down a bad path right now. People don't want to admit it. People don't want to admit they're addicted to their phone, all this stuff, but you can see it. It's out there. There are a lot of people like that and they don't realize it and how big of a problem it's going to be, but we all know, we all have this intuitive nature to us. So anyway, if he didn't have chapter 10, I may have rated this a 2, just for 1 for being funny and 2 for teaching me a few things, but 0 takeaways. So down 3 points. But what do you guys think on your rating for this book? Get my calculator out just in case I have to average. Kyle gives it a 5.
I'm giving it 5.
All right. Ashley.
4.5. Use those fractional plates.
All righty.
Oh my
Joe.
goodness.
I wanted to rate it a 4.5, but I don't want to say it's a fractional plate. I just might have to drop it down to a 4.
You triggered.
You got a 4 or a 5.
Just can't do it.
Go 4.75 for you, and then you can go 4.5.
He said 4.5. He snuck it in there.
4.5. I was between 4 and 4.5 because while it was super entertaining, there's a lot of awesome stuff about it. A very interesting read. It wasn't I need to go apply and change this and change this. It was just that was really cool. And then that was kind of it. But I think it's really cool for other people to listen to. So I'll bump it to a 4.5 just in case it edges somebody to go listen to it.
I will give it a 5. And not from the like I normally would bump it down for what Joe said. Like, I don't know if I have, like, chapter 10 was good, but still I don't have like, you know what, after reading that, I'm going to go implement all these things. But I think it's a great read for a lot of people, and his entertainment and funniness factor gives it that extra half from a 4.5 to a 5 for me, because that book could have really sucked. Like easy. Like if you got the wrong scientist to write that, like we would have been like, Kyle, what the hell were you thinking? Like, but it was really good, and it all had to do with the author himself. And I hope he writes more books, because that was really solid. So that brings the team average to 4.75. I don't know if that's the highest that we've rated a book collectively.
I think it is.
Yeah, it's pretty strong.
How do we get to 4.75, guys? What do we have to use? Sorry.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
How do I change my rating now?
I think it's always a fractional rating. I don't know if we've landed on whole numbers, but maybe we have.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the book. Let's knock out this workout and we can roll on.
1,000. So this is probably one of the earliest first ones that Jerred made up a long time ago, before even GGA was a thing or something. I think it was part of the 30-day workout.
I think you're right.
The brutal workout thing that you made, that half of them aren't even.
I think it was 14 days, isn't it?
Either way, it was too many days.
I'm gonna Google it while you brief it.
Yeah.
This was when Joe was a parking lot athlete.
Yes, that's
So,
parking
how
lot.
long this one's been around.
Yeah, every Meet Yourself Saturday, we're just gonna say what part of my life it was in. So parking lot athlete Joe, 1,000
workouts.
Okay, 10 rounds or 30 minutes, and you will do these in order, not partitioning. So you do 25 pull-ups, kipping, but you asterisk on kipping. You got to be able to actually do a good amount of strict pull-ups in order for you to kip, or else you're going to hurt yourself. So anyway,
go back to the study. You got to be strong first.
Yes.
25 strict first before you kip.
25 push-ups, 25 sit-ups, 25 squats. So 25 of everything: pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, squats, in that order. 10 rounds or 30 minutes, depending on where you're at. And I believe the cap is there because really adhere to the cap on this one, because if you can't complete those reps in that time, then that means you just can't. Your body can't handle it. So you shouldn't try to force yourself to do, this in 90 minutes, and then you are just completely overworked. And
you have rhabdo. You will get rhabdo if you don't time cap yourself.
Yeah. All right, Ashley.
I said just keep moving on this one. I actually said just keep swimming like Dory, but my kid's watching Finding Nemo a lot lately. This one is fun, but it's a doozy. So you have to keep moving, just don't stop. And so for music for me for that is, I said Marshmello, some Tiesto, some Martin Garrix. I'm going the EDM route for that way.
Eat a marshmallow before this workout?
Marshmello is definitely, never mind, is the artist, but that's okay. And like Joe said, for the pull-ups, if you can't kip them because you just don't have enough strict pull-ups, make sure you're doing some ring rows, some inverted body rows. You can even scale down the push-ups, whatever you need to do. So make sure you are doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What she said at the end there of scale down to something that you can do for unbroken reps, right? That's what you want to do. You want to keep moving through this workout. It's only 30 minutes. It's a lot of work and it's going to kick your butt, but it's only 30 minutes max unless you finish it in 10 rounds. But scale it down to something that you can do for 25 unbroken reps. So if you don't have the pull-ups, then do the ring rows, or if you need to go to your knees for the push-ups or something like that. But I would also say start the workout that way. So don't don't go, just standard push-ups and then like 3 or 4 or 5 rounds in, then go to the knee push-ups. Like start wherever you need to start, and something that you can do for 25 unbroken reps for 10 rounds. Cause obviously you want to do the 10 rounds. And so you can scale it that way, as opposed to just trying to, you got 3 pull-ups at once and then you're trying to shake it out and do 3 more. And you get through the first round of pull-ups and you've spent, 10 minutes trying to do that. Don't do that. Just pick something that you can do for 25 unbroken reps and move through the workout. Keep a steady pace, but also be mindful of that time limit because it'll sneak up on you. Joe. Did Joe give his already, or did he just brief it?
It's kind of like I was going along. Yeah,
I forget.
make sure you can do there's not much to say outside of what you two have already said. So
Do you think you could do this in zone 2 in like an hour?
probably just because muscle fatigue is going to be the main factor. After like 4 or 5 rounds, you're going to be feeling it, especially on the pull-ups and or push-ups. Sit-ups and squats are just going to be like, that'll be the only thing that'll jack your heart rate because you can do this super fast. But pull-ups and push-ups, you could probably maintain zone 2 in this. And if anything, it might help you from burning out your muscles. So sure, go ahead, zone 2, because it's more of a strength endurance than anything.
Sit-ups take me forever. Is that just me? Every time we have sit-ups programmed, I'm like, why is this taking so damn long? I'm not like sitting around resting. I'm like, these reps are just like taking so long.
Do you use NavNat?
This is a tough one. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
It's more of the tailbone that really hurts.
So I don't really want to talk about the workout. I want to talk about the
ultra processed foods.
No, Joe mentioned the history. And so if you Google Garage Gym WOD Challenge, this is back in the CrossFit days. Oh, so man. This is, and what I just realized when I pulled it up, that this is the 10th year. It is officially 10 years old as of right now. And so we didn't even plan it, but I pulled it up and there's this PDF. It's 10 workouts, 10 days, 300 minutes, 100 rounds, 4,650 reps and 100,000 pounds of volume lifted. And it's the challenge is to do these 10 workouts in 10 days. And they're all kind of like Meet Yourself Saturday workouts. It's like 10 rounds or 30 minutes, whichever comes first. I don't think we ended up using most of these even though I was aware of them, because like these are like hard to throw into the programming. And a lot of them are pretty brutal, but maybe we'll and some of them are just stupid. Like I was just 100% basing it off of what I could do. And it was like, one of them's called meager. It's like 3 reps of the deadlift at 405 pounds. There's no like substitution. It's like, it's just like, you must do 405 pounds on the deadlift. Oh wait, no, deadlift must be 200% of body weight. Still, that's my scaling notes. So look, I've come a long way in 10 years.
It's like King Kong, but just one version.
Yeah, I'm like, this is it. That's all there is. So if you want to look at some of these workouts, they're just like, they're crazy. And then like, I'm putting in like windmills and like a fast workout, which is like a technical movement. I wouldn't program that today. Like, I don't know. It's good to look back at these things. But there are a lot of good workouts in here. 1,000's the last one. And what's crazy is you go through the first 9 and they're all like heavy. There's either sprints or like something, and they're all really hard. I remember doing these and they're all very challenging. And then you get to the last one and you're like, oh, thank God, it's just all body weight. Compared to what I've been like getting my ass kicked the last couple of days or last week on these other ones. But this one is no joke. So completing 100 reps in, was it 3 minutes per round, is no easy task. I do think the pull-ups, to finish in the time cap, you would have to kip. Like there's no other way. I don't think anybody could do that. And that's 250 pull-ups. It's very, very challenging. So I would say if you were to keep to the 25 rep scheme without scaling, break your pull-ups up even from the start. So like 5, 5, 5, 5, until you get to 25, or whatever you can do, and have breaks on purpose in there. And then every time you do the push-ups, just try and knock out the biggest sets that you can handle. If that's a set of 25, great. But if you don't think you can do that 10 times, then do 2 sets to get to 25. Sit-ups, I think, should be nonstop. Just hit those until you get them. And then same with squats. Squats 25 as fast as you can. And that's about it in the execution. This one is very challenging to finish in the time cap. But yeah, good luck and go check it out. What did you say? Heart rate?
I said, watch your heart rate. I feel like this could be an easy one to just stay in zone 5 and just keep going, which kind of scares me a bit.
I don't know. I feel like the pull-ups are really going to slow people down. Unless you're doing like the Murph 52, you probably can't even handle the pull-ups for this workout. Like I can't handle the pull-ups for this workout. And not that I'm super good at pull-ups anymore, but I'd have to scale down after a few rounds probably, because it's 250 reps of everything. I haven't done 250 reps of pull-ups in a day in like ever. So just think about that as well when you're trying to pick up what you're going to do.
Yeah. I mean, even the people doing Murph once a week are only knocking out 100 pull-ups, right? Like this is 2.5 that.
Well, I guess if you're doing this prescribed is what I mean, because
Yeah.
you can just move fast and just get up there fast.
I do wonder about the heart rate because with Murph, when I do the calisthenics, if I'm doing that as fast as I can, yeah, I'll be in zone 4. I could push it to zone 5 if I'm going really fast. But there's also a mile at the front of that, that kind of has that lasting metabolic demand. So I do think that you'd get there maybe, but it might be like halfway through the workout, maybe around 3 if you're going really fast. Because sit-ups is basically laying down. That's a break, And
it's a long one because they take forever.
There you go.
I just want to so real quick
twice.
So real quick, I just want to go back to this garage gym WOD challenge thing.
No.
Did you Google it?
Oh yeah, I've got it pulled up. And so you go to the rules page. Right? There's 8 rules on the page. Okay. Rule number 7 is scaling is allowed, but only by the standards stated in the notes section of each workout. When you go to the notes section of each workout, without fail, all 10, the very first thing that is said in the notes section, no scaling allowed.
No, that's per workout.
Rule number 7 says scaling is allowed, but every single notes section for every single workout, no scaling allowed. It's just a joke. No,
the first one says no scaling. And then the second one says scaling allowed. So, and then the next one, then the next one says scaling not allowed, scaling allowed. So it's like back and forth.
Oh man, I just love it.
Growth, people, growth.
These things are unbelievable.
Yeah, right. Definitely go check it out. But we will wrap this one up. For all of our athletes who maybe you've been around since the Garage Gym WOD Challenge, all 1 to 2 of you, thanks for sticking around.
Joe being one.
Yeah. I think that was probably pre-Joe. That was like,
yeah,
that was a long time ago. But yeah, thanks for sticking around, making the community what it is, reading the books, following along, checking out the science and putting in the workouts and getting your daily over decades in. If you want to be a part of Garage Gym Athlete, just go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a 14-day free trial. We would absolutely love to have you. But that's it for this one. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you. Gym Athlete Podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Thanks for listening.